whichever one of those levels can work for you. I like to make sure you hear and hear and hear so that you can ponder, you can contemplate. Um, we only hold a small amount. Actually, they did a study and they said that the mind is so unstable, so unable to concentrate. I think Panajip said it was 8 seconds is the average for um, an adult. 8 seconds, and what it does is it doesn't even want to hear everything. It like just skips over, and it fills in the gaps. So it hears a little bit of what you say. First couple of words, hops to, a dozen words later, hops to, it just minds. And then it just fills in. That's why you can have 20 people in a room and say something and they heard 20 different things, because we have hearing. It's very, very uh, individualized and selective. So um, in this time, the only way, because they didn't have the printing press and they weren't writing things down, and this was there wasn't a language, even Pali. I mean, like, the Buddha didn't speak Pali, right? You know, that was a and Pali was an oral language, but it wasn't the Buddha's tongue. I mean, so we have translation, transliteration, translation, and transliteration, and now we have something. So if his instructions were fingers pointing to, and now it's been translated and there's a transliteration, translation, and transliteration. We might like be in the ballpark, but we're going to be pretty far away from how it was. And the more and more time goes on, the more obscure the teachings will be. So we have to be patient, with ourselves, um, and grasp what we can as we can. But I like to do this old kind of way of recalling because um, it's how children learn. You know, it's how um, there's a song that says, "What goes in through the ear goes to the heart." That's how children learn to speak. They listen. What goes in through the eye can fool the mind. That's how grown-ups learn to be so blind. Known by heart, known by heart. The Dharma must be known by heart. So if you would be truly free, hear the words and let them in your heart. Now I know that they called his disciples the analyzers, but this was their tool for tooling the mind. And so there's this heart mind, and that's the sure fix. And so the Buddha began to talk to his son, and he said first that he should develop meditation, right? That was like the earth, air, fire, water, and space, and that in that way he wouldn't be what? Oh, offended. He wouldn't be humiliated. He wouldn't be disgusted. Yeah. And so that's the first step. If we're going to meditate, we have to sit down. It's like, I need to meditate because she got on my last nerve. It's like, it's not that. You're not going to be able to. You have to get her off your last nerve before you get started. And that's a decision. I can set that away right now. I'm perplexed about something. I'm confused about something. I don't understand something. I'm a little bit hot right now. Whatever it is that's yelling me, me, me. It might be noise. It might be somebody moving around, Um, I tell you, if you get easily distracted in a group like this, wear earplugs. If you get distracted in a group like this, recognize that that's me being distracted by a little sound, you know, a little disruption. And I have to overcome that. I have to stay on my mark. No, we're not distracted by things we don't, when things that we like doing, when we like something, we're not easily distracted. Whatever it is, like, I used to write music when I was composing nothing. It was like, psh, everything shut out. Except like maybe the melodies I heard in my head, and I would see music like in colors, you know. Um, so it's interesting. I was watching a movie, and it had a play on that, and it had the actor was making music. I said it's not like that, but you don't know unless you actually experienced it. But it's a strange thing. Um, uh, and so, in this way, we come to know what is our poison. That's what this is about. Going inside, finding our poison, and taking the antidote. And when we take the antidote, we're free. We're healed. Yeah. So he was dealing with Rahula's poison, which was pride. Pride that he was the Buddha's son. That he kind of looked like him. He was pretty buff himself. And that the Buddha had all of this fame, I think he was 12 at this time. Is that right? 18? Okay. That is 18. You were old by the time you're 18 in that day. Okay, so Panyadeepa said he thinks he was 18. And so the Buddha chastised him, and he came back and he sat. And so after that, he said, Rahula developed meditation on loving kindness. For when you do, any ill will be abandoned. Meditate on compassion. When you do, any cruelty in you will be uprooted. Develop meditation on altruistic joy. For when you do, any discontent will dissolve. Develop meditation on equanimity. And when you do, any aversion will disappear. So that's the reason why we develop. That word develop means that there's something we have to do. Like we sitting there waiting for it to hit us on the head or to just we have to develop it. So he talks about arousing zeal for the practice, arousing zeal for and utilizing and balancing these 5 faculties: the faculty of faith, faculty of mindfulness, faculty of energy, faculty of wisdom, and what's the other one, Panyadeepa? Mindfulness, faith, wisdom, energy, concentration. These faculties. And there's something about these faculties because they kind of, bounces. If we're are slowing down, we don't feel like practicing anymore, then we need to arouse energy. Yeah. And so we can use a faculty to to, it's like being on a seesaw, to shift the seesaw. And it's when they're all balanced, these five, then it's smooth sailing. I mean, he gives us so many different things. If you don't like focusing on this, okay, here's some more. Here's focus on this area. You know, balance by faculties. Oh, okay, you don't like that? Okay, do the Brahma Viharas. Okay, you don't like doing that? You know, he gives us so many different. There's so many doorways through which we can enter. You don't have to master all of them. Just one gets you inside. You know, just one. But you should try until you find one that gets you in there. So I know which one gets me in there. If I don't know yet, then I'm going to try different ones. But don't try to master them all. You'll just get befuddled, confused, discouraged. So after the Buddha told him to do that, he went on. Now remember what did Rahula ask him? He asked him how to do mindfulness of breathing that would be of great fruit and great benefit. And he's starting with all of these other things. And then he gets to it. And he says, Rahula, develop mindfulness on foulness. For when you do any lust, then you will be abandoned. And then he said, Rahula, develop mindfulness on impermanence, perceptions of impermanence. And when you do, the conceit I am will be abandoned. And so you see, he was hitting all of our points of obstacle. Rahula, he must be a lot like me, you know, because I could look at this one and say, oh yeah, you know, every once in a while, get that little stab of cruelty, that little ice pick. You know, even if you don't carry it out, just let me think about it for a minute. I'm not going to do it. You know, just let me just think about that little pinch. You know, so that's me. So if that's coming up for me, then I know that it's no point right then at that time for me to be meditating on foulness, which neutralizes lust. I need to be focusing, developing that which neutralizes what? Cruelty. Yeah, you see what I mean? So it's like that. And depending on when you sit down, certain things will arise for you. Now, I'm reading it out of the book now. But the more we get comfortable with ourselves, with whatever our impediments are, you know, not afraid to look at them, not afraid to acknowledge that they exist, being willing to peel them off of ourselves, you know, like we say, well, that's just me, that's just how I am. You know, like I know I do this thing and I don't mean any harm, you know. I mean, if he knew me, he'd know that I didn't mean any harm about that. But if it's a unwholesome action, we need to just uproot it. That's it. You know, and so in this way, the more we look at ourselves as like this, the less afraid we get of looking. We find that actually we can face ourselves, and we don't have to play the blame game. We just see these defilements, but they're not me. They're not mine. They're not worthy to be called me. This is how I am. And it becomes easier, that more of a commitment to uprooting them. And in this way, we become gentler with ourselves, and at the same time, we become more committed to uprooting those defilements. The shame leaves we can discuss, have a conversation with ourselves. And then we're in a position to move forward. Then he went on and he said, Rahul, develop mindfulness of breathing. And when it is developed and cultivated, so we have to do what? Starts with a D, and it has to be cultivated. Okay. Then it is of great fruit and great benefit. And how is it developed and cultivated? And then Pannavati went through the 4 steps. Okay. And we're repeating them, so after a while it doesn't look like steps. You know, it just looks like an arc. It's like a curve. It's like, this is just, you know, you just ease right into it. It's not like this, then this, then this. Or if you want to go the other way, this, then this, then this. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3. It just becomes smooth like that. You know, it's just like it. It's just like that. You know? And so he says, breathing in long, he understands. I breathe in long, breathing out long, he understands. It's a long breath. Breathing in short, short breath. And then he goes on, I shall breathe in experiencing. Now, he's not talking about understanding, not talking about thinking, not using that particular faculty. He is now experiencing something. How do you experience something? If you can imagine, like when you, I got on a zip line one time, you know, and at first I was in the mind all about the zip line, like I really wanted to do it, but when we got up to that top, I started thinking, like, when was the last time this thing was serviced? You know, I wanted to have the experience. It looked like fun and it would be adventuresome, but when I really got to it, I started thinking about the dangers of it, you know, and I like, did I really want to do this? And my mind got, so by the time I got strapped into the chair, they needed to strap me in because, you know, and then finally I had to like just let go and experience. The same thing when I went parasailing. You know, I was thinking about parasailing, and when I was thinking about it, it thought like it was a good idea. But when I got strapped in and we got ready to start going, my thinking wasn't lining up. You know, I was like, was this a good idea? I had asked Pannavati, and he said, no, I don't want to go. You know, and so I said, okay, well then I'm strapped in now. You know, I'm not gonna chicken out and, you know, I'm gonna go with it. Let the wind blow, you know. And I got caught up in the experience of it. And it was glorious. It was glorious, the wind, well, I was gonna say the wind blowing in my hair. Sorry, this thing's not working so good for me tonight. It was glorious as I felt the wind on my face and the lift. And at a certain point, you were no longer aware of the drag, like the air. You got to a certain altitude, and it was like airless. There was like you were being held up, but there was nothing holding you up. It didn't seem like there was any drag or any resistance at all. It was like you were in a free float, way up in the sky. And then I began to like just look around at the beauty, just as if I were not harnessed in. Before, I felt the weight of the harnessing, you know? I felt you started in the water, and you could feel before you got the lift out of the water, the drag of the water against the body. Then it was the drag of the air against the body. And then, but the more I just relaxed into the experience of it, then there was this weightlessness. It just shifted completely. And I stayed with that. Now, Kay went up with me. And I was afraid for her because she's very, very analytical, and she didn't want to do it. But she also experienced the same thing. And we came back and we tried to explain it to Pannavati. Like, you should really try this. This is really good. But we couldn't really articulate the experience. You had to experience it to know. And what I'm saying to you is that this is something like that. But it depends on your willingness to suspend this critical thinking mind that wants to evaluate and tell you what the experience is, what is happening here, And it cannot tell you. You have to have a direct experience. The Buddha constantly talked about just the direct experience. And if we're willing, to lean into it, we can have that direct experience. And then we know something for ourselves. We know something for ourselves. I wanted to read just a little bit, because sometimes it's just encouraging, especially when we've been practicing hard. You all have been practicing hard for days, and I've seen the results. But there's even more. And in this particular section, he was talking about direct knowledges. And he said, herein, when visible objects that are not within the focus of the bhikkhu's fleshly eye come into the focus of his eye of knowledge, that is to say, visible objects that are inside the belly, belonging to the heart basis, belonging to what is below the earth's surface, to what is behind walls and mountains even, and enclosures, or even in another world sphere. And they are as if seen with the fleshly eye, then it should be understood that the divine eye has arisen. And only that is capable of seeing the visible objects that I discuss here. So if we're really trying to see something, like with with this notion of within our human context of seeing, like, yeah, my eyes were closed and inside there I saw this and I saw that, going in a wrong direction. Because it's not with the fleshly eye that one is going to see. But when you have entered into the experience, then there's another set of faculties that activate. He said, but this, we've talked about visible objects not seen with the fleshly eye. But this is an obstacle for the ordinary man. He said, why? Because even when he determines, let there be light, if there is something, like we see something, then fear arises in him. Especially if he sees the fearful forms, like of spirits and ogres, etc., that are there, owing to which his mind becomes distracted. So he needs to be careful in seeing what is visible. And I think that's all I want to say about that. Because as Panyadeeva said, I don't want to pre-frame you. I just want to let you know that you're not trying to see something with your ordinary eyes or imagination creating something. Now, in the Tibetan, we're taught that, we really need to enhance this, our capacity for imagining. And maybe, I don't know, maybe in Tibet, that's true. Because it's such a barren place. Nothing there. But we have all kinds of glitter, all kinds of things to attract to. The last thing we need is more imagination. So what might be suitable in one, in one place or for one group may not be suitable in another. There's so many things that you will read, and if you take all of them, you'll be totally, totally confused. And so that's why in a group like this, we just go with the basics. He said, this works for everybody. He said, even this is what I used for my own awakening. Now, there's a caveat that comes with this mindfulness of breathing thing. He said, if you were focusing on any other object, the more you focused on it, the more concretized the object would become for you, right? But he said, but the breath, it's not like that. Because the more you focus, the finer it gets. So in that sense, it's a little bit difficult. But yet, he said, it meets, it fulfills all the requirements for establishing mindfulness. So even though it may be a little bit difficult, he said this is the quicker path, this particular object of meditation. Okay, so we did the 4 things. He said breathing in long, short, understand breathing long and short. Breathing in, experiencing the whole body. He said, and the breath is a body among bodies. And so the whole body, in another sutta, he said it is how, if you read the sutta on how mindfulness of breathing satisfies all the conditions of the 4 foundations. He said, it is a body among bodies. And so he talks about watching the whole breath, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Experiencing that whole breath. Then it starts with, he trains thus. So now there's some training going on in here. And who's the trainer? Who's the trainer? Yeah, Mm-hmm. I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily formation. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, tranquilizing. Now that's when he's asked us to do something, and that is, how even in the natural world, somebody's coming in there all excited, and this happened, he says, stop, take a minute, and breathe. And it's something about doing that begins to settle us down. It begins to, when we're all discombobulated, it begins to bring us back together. And so he says, we have the capacity to do that. We already know that. We even tell that to our children. Stop and take a deep breath. And just breathe a few times. Now tell me again what you were trying to say. Well, Ma, it was in my... Stop and take a deep breath. Now tell me again what you're trying to say. And it says, while I was going, and we can see how it works just even in an ordinary sense. So this doesn't require us to heighten our minds to some hocus pocus. It's just like in an ordinary sense we can understand this. Then he trains thus: I shall breathe in, experiencing rapture. And I shall breathe out, experiencing rapture. Now, when does this come? And then after that, breathe in, experiencing pleasure. Breathe out, experiencing pleasure. Now, when do rapture and pleasure come? Of the training? It comes at the beginning. It comes right after the very first instruction where we are required to do something. I shall breathe in and out, tranquilizing the breath. And when the breath is tranquil, I shall breathe in, experiencing rapture. So there's nothing else for us to do. Tranquilizing the breath and waiting for the experience of rapture and pleasure to arise. Waiting for it like not, I'm waiting, is it coming, but waiting like like when you go to a fine restaurant and there's the waiter and he stands there with his white cloth over high class restaurant. He stands not too close that it feels like your privacy is being invaded, and not so far away that he can't see the slight flick of a hand to refill a glass. There's a quality to the service that he's offering. So it's something like that. So waiting, very much aware. He's aware and not too close and not too far. Alert and yet in a certain repose. So he's not like a soldier, but he's standing there just waiting. So it's something like that. And so we stay there. Now he says what happens is as you begin to experience this feeling of great ease that you actually caused to come, because we already know our faults. We already know, the mind just won't settle down. We already know I'm no good at doing this. We already know those things, But in our willingness to relax what we know, to discover what we don't know about ourselves, something happens. There's a sense of accomplishment. This kind of joy has its basis in that sense of accomplishment, that something is happening, that I am doing it right, that I do have the patience to just wait on it. There is a sense within oneself this of confidence. Most of us need more confidence. And this is how we get it. So as this confidence begins to arise, just because we've had the patience to wait, and as this confidence begins to arise, there is a kind of happiness, a kind of joy that begins to bubble up. You can't bubble it up. It is the fruit of the confidence and the patience to wait. Now, I know we live in a time that patience is a dirty word, and it's very difficult, for us to wait on anything. I needed to print something for the banker today, and I couldn't find it because he wanted a copy of the engineer's report and the pictures, and that happened in January. It is now December. I get about 200 emails a day. Half of them I delete, the other half I have to keep. So scrolling down in Yahoo, which I'd like to change that, David, using Yahoo, there's no fast way. Maureen told me I could have, if I had been on Gmail, I could do January and hit the button, and it'd take me to all of January's emails. But I had to start on December 24th, scrolling down. My finger needs therapy now. Scrolling down, December to November to October to September. And it took about 35 minutes, and I think I was in April by then. But just scrolling down, trying to just get to January. And so I was just thinking, this way of going, trying to find something so far back. How does one do that? So I really do want to change my thingy. I want to go over to, okay. But if we develop this kind of patience, I said, you know what? I could have gone down to the permit office and got a copy. They're 5 minutes away. And I didn't have the patience. I had to weigh it against this cold outside, But I didn't have the patience to wait to scroll down to January. And I was trying to look patient on the outside. Because, they were waiting and, they think, oh, this is the monk in there. And they're so patient and everything, But inside, I was not patient at all. And then Jay comes over and he says, do you have it yet? I said, no. He said, well, let me go in my email. I got it. He goes and he does have Gmail. And he pulled it up in 30 seconds. Now, then I became more frustrated. Instead of being happy that it's done, I was frustrated because I wasted 35 minutes doing something. But what is 35 minutes? I could have been doing it and been in a peaceful moment. I could have done 35-minute meditation, actually, But we're so impatient. We want it now. And it's deeply rooted in us. It's deeply rooted. We can do anything else for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes, even for an hour, except, starts with an M. Yeah, except meditate. So this is just a learning curve, this sitting. Later on, you don't even have to sit that much because once you found, you found that field with the gem and you know where it is, and you take possession of it, then this won't be a thing. You start to lose your sense of time as you know it because when you're really into meditation, you're no longer in time. You're in a different dimension and you're outside of time. And that's why some can sit for a long time if they hit that spot, if they go through that portal. So I just wanted to encourage you that if you're starting to struggle, stop. You're going in the wrong direction. Arousing the effort and the energy is around laboring to enter into the rest. So now we're going in. And so establishing mindfulness in front of us. And that means getting seated in such a way that you're comfortable. Back is straight. Chin slightly tucked in so that the head and the spine is erect. It's almost if you could imagine like being a Christmas bulb ornament dangling from a string. Not too rigid, not too relaxed. If you're sitting in the chair and it's one of those chairs that have you on the slight incline, you will get fatigued. So I ask you to sit up closer to the edge of the chair so that your back is straight and your feet planted firmly on the ground. Your hands can rest on your thigh, palms up or palms down. One hand encased in the other, or however that might be comfortable for you. Other than resting on the arms of a chair, if you're in a chair that has arms, don't rest on the arms. Stay connected bodily. And we recognize that we've already made our commitment because we're here. There are things that we could have been doing other than this. And some came at great expense to be here. So it has value. We wanted to be here. That is worthy to be praised. And we're diligent in listening and trying to put into practice what we hear. And that is so honorable. So we know that we're on the right path, the right track. And we take that inhalation just as it naturally occurs. And we experience the breath as it crosses one spot. You can pick the spot where you feel the air coming into the body and leaving the body, right there. I could think of it as a beautiful breath. Just breathing naturally. Knowing our in-breaths and our out-breaths. Knowing that was a short breath compared to the last breath. Well, that was a long breath, a deep breath compared to the last breath. And even as I peer into the vastness of the emptiness behind the closed eyelid, I am kept mindful by the feel of the coolness or the warmth of the in-breath and the out-breath. I know exactly what I'm doing. That's a long breath, that's a short breath. That's a coarse breath, that's a smooth breath. I'm not tranquilizing the breaths. I'm just getting to know their quality. Is the in-breath longer or shorter than the out-breath? Or is the out-breath longer or shorter than the in-breath? Just getting very, very familiar with the breath. Is there a pause between the in-breath and out-breath? Do I start exhaling before I take a full inhalation? Just becoming familiar and well acquainted with the breath. There's no doubt about whether I'm doing it right because I'm just breathing. Doesn't require any thought, just experiencing. And in this way of non-action, something begins to occur. Keeping the body erect if I'm starting to become sluggish, making sure that the body remains firm. If I'm becoming too rigid, relaxing just a bit. Don't let go of the object. Experiencing the feel of the breath, the inhalation and the exhalation. Maintaining just enough energy to stay alert and engaged without arousing too much energy. So there's no agitation. balancing the energy. Eyes are soft. Facial muscles are soft. Body is erect, so there's no skeletal fatigue. Muscles are relaxed. Mentally, I'm in a kind state, an accepting state, a loving state. It's called a state of mind called beautiful. The state of mind called beautiful. And if I'm feeling a little agitation, I just tamp that down. If I'm feeling a little lethargic, I just bring my energy up a little bit. You figure out how to do that. Relaxing the eyebrows, cheek muscles, No need to future pace. I know what I'm doing for the next 15 minutes. Just this. And as the mind remains steady, the breath becomes steady. As the breath becomes steady, the mind becomes still. The body becomes still. And as the mind begins to move towards stopping, we allow it to just naturally come to a rest. Joyfully, we allow the stopping. Any questions? Any comments? How did it differ from what you do? Just talking. From what you do when you sit to still your mind. How do you guide the mind into stillness?
I have to let it become still. I was pleasantly surprised and aided by Panyatipa's second instruction that he gave us regarding try sitting and instead of looking at your breath or using your breath as the object, which I've done for a long time, gave me permission to go ahead and look at my thoughts, which I needed in order to do it. Evidently, just felt like I needed it, so it was great. And as soon as I did, they scattered like a cat walking into a room full of birds, which was striking in itself and drew my analytical self towards it. But I let that part stop and just not think, because the birds had scattered. And I could just sit there in the midst of this empty room. Even though I didn't feel absorbed, I don't feel like I entered, but I no longer had the thoughts to bother me. I just had the emptiness and the object for the longest time before something else came up. And so I got to, at least in that sense, I guess kind of like you ride a bicycle, kind of by accident, I saw that was like, and so became a little more able to kind of go there by feel.
Okay, so you had the emptiness and the object. And what was the object?
My breath.
Okay, but
But
did you say that he gave you permission?
earlier, he had given me
Mm.
permission to just look at my thoughts and
Mhm.
evaluate them as just
Mhm.
wholesome or unwholesome.
Mhm.
But going through that hour of doing that let me just kind of novelly experience and quiet head.
Okay.
Because
So,
for some reason, I was afraid to think. Now,
okay, no, give it back to him.
okay.
So, what did you do in this last set?
I took the experience I gained from trying to look at my thoughts, which seemed to make them run away, and gave me that empty head. But now that I'd had the experience of the empty head, for lack of a better way of calling it that, I took that into my regular, shall we say, way of dropping into focusing on my breath alone. And basically, uh, it was easier, it was more facilitated. I got to spend more time right at the point of the saw cutting the wood, right at the point of the, right at the, with the breath, with the breath, with the breath, with the breath. And it would get finer and finer, and then I would get scared and unfortunately do what I know I'm not supposed to do until I afterthought, which was I tried to find it again and therefore breathed deeper and kind of came out and had to kind of start again and
Okay.
did that a lot.
Okay. Okay, so, we used to sing the song, if you got the old time religion, you ought to show some sign. So I'm going to be looking for the signs of this that you say you attained when you are not in meditation for the rest of this retreat, okay?
Uh-oh. Thanks for putting me at ease.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, you want to go ahead, David?
I was just going to say that it was just a nice softening, just kind of a soft invitation, creating a space and a soft invitation for. And I think there was also just kind of there was just that sense of that it was. One time the phrase, breath of God breathe through me or whatever. And so it was just kind of a nice, reassuring kind of like, okay, this is where the main deal is, so why not stay there?
With this meditation compared to earlier, I had more thoughts earlier today, but this one, I didn't really have any thoughts, but I still fell asleep. And your voice is so relaxing.
So, that thing about falling asleep, because it is to bring it down. We're just so not acquainted with stillness. We're just not acquainted with it. So it's about getting acquainted with it. Actually, the falling asleep really is that you're tamping down. It's that you go a little bit too low, and you cross that point. So it's about feeling how to bring up the energy when we start to fall too low. A lot of times when people first come to meditation, they've been so swinging that every time they meditate, they just drop right off, and I don't even bother them for a couple of days, because sometimes it takes, like just been running on fumes, and it takes having this permission to just power down. But then we have to learn how to modulate the energy in there, If we don't, we will manufacture things, because imagination runs deep. We will manufacture things, but if we're not like in that stillness, anything else we think is there that goes with stillness is just our imagination. It's not really happening, The mind will trick you, but it's really recognizing the flow of the energy, the in breath and the out breath. It's an exchange, and it's a balanced exchange, and that's what brings the tranquilization of the breath. By the same token, the energy that we feel arising or descending in the body is finding just that right space. So we're doing something, we're feeling into it. Does everybody swim in here? Something about like that float, like when you lay back to float. I mean, the body has to be like just right for the float to occur. Just a little too much of the bend will sink. A little too much arching, you sink. So you have to feel for just that right position for float. It's like that. So that's what you're doing. You're really working at just this fine thing. And when you hit it, that's it. So I was talking to kind of give you some idea. I know talking can be distracting, especially if you have your own way of getting where you're going, and so I hate guided meditations. For me personally, you can't guide my meditation like I can guide my meditation. But if you can't guide your meditation, then allow someone to guide your meditation. And if you go with it, in that way you can learn how to guide yourself into it. So something like that, yes. And all of these different ways. No right way, no wrong way, just wanting you to hear different ways.
Could you give a little bit of guidance on when you're tamping it down and the breath gets tranquil and then it goes a little too low? I can actually feel it when it's slipping too low, but I don't know how to arouse the energy.
So just let me say it this way, rather than trying to like do something with the breath to pick yourself up, like trying to do something. Well, the Buddha does say that you can do something physical, but when you know that the breath is fine and you seem like you've lost the breath, like Vasudhi was saying, then there's this impulse to like take a breath or something like that to bring it back. If you know that now you have not stopped breathing, but it's become more subtle than your consciousness can detect at this point, you got to get sharper. It's like if I'm trying to look through glasses and there's the print still there, like the breath still there, but I can't see it, I can't read it, then I switch the 200s out for 250s, so to get finer and finer, so that, there it is, more magnification, more, there you can become a little more intense in your focus.
Actually, the problem I was experiencing on this sit was not so much that I was not staying present. I was actually falling into that sloth and torpor, and I knew in the moment, here's sloth and torpor, and I need to arouse more energy, but I did not know how to do it, how to arouse enough to get me back to that very subtle no breath place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm telling you two ways. One way is physical movement. The other way is mental movement. I mean, some of this is like, how sloth and torpor doesn't just happen. There is an agreement with it. It doesn't just happen. Because when you're starting to get relaxed, then you feel the relaxation. And when the sloth and torpor comes, you feel that slide and say, this feels good. I know I need to, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I'm gonna just stay one more second. And so that's what happens. There is an absolute agreement with the mind. So the mind is not saying, how do I get out of this? It's like, I'm just going to stay with this one more second. There's this agreement. There is an agreement. So look there, and you'll see that we agree we're going to take a little nappy now, and then we're going to get back to this. Or like, you know what, I'm just tired. Or whatever, but there is there is that very subtle agreement. That's what you have decided that you're going to do. Unless you are like really physically so tired that sleep overtakes you. Okay, so that's the difference in dealing with, and then that couldn't happen unless boredom had already crept in. Boredom comes in. That's why he gives us so much in the beginning. He talks about applied and sustained thought, because that's what keeps the boredom away. In examining all the qualities of the breath, and then recognizing and then deliberately tranquilizing it. How much? Just this much. How much? This much. How much do I need? It's like anything else that we do, that we put forth effort into learning. How to play the piano, how to sing on pitch, how to color and draw, how to paint, how to craft something. This is the same as that, And so it's that interest, sustaining the interest, examining it, looking at it, feeling it, vibing with it, all of this. And
that's helpful. Thank you.
okay, any other? I think it's mealtime. Ding ding.